Good afternoon. Today I'll be affirming the resolution. On balance, social media does more harm than good. Today our team will prove that social media causes more harm than good because it leads to psychological injuries, unattainable expectations, and addictive behaviors for young people in our society. The framework for today's debate is the negative outcomes for youth, particularly those between 12 and 18 using social media. For the purpose of this debate, we will be using the Merriam-Webster definition of social media, which defines social media as forms of electronic communication through which users create online communities to share information, images, ideas, personal messages, and other content. Contention 1 is that social media use can lead to psychological injuries. Subpoint A. Social media is a medium for cyberbullying among teens. Social media sites are very publicly accessible, so messages can be seen by many people very quickly, even those you thought were private. At the same time, social media sites allow people to interact and post anonymously, making it easier to bully without accountability. The CDC found that over 37% of children have experienced cyberbullying at some point. In just the past year, over 15% of high school students had experienced it. According to the Cyberbullying Research Center study, 73% of teenagers who have been cyberbullied have experienced it on social media, with the most common sites for cyberbullying being Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. They also found that teenagers who experience cyberbullying are also more likely to have mental health problems, including depression and anxiety. Our second subpoint. Social media can negatively affect children's social skills, with a national survey published on Education Weekly just this year showing that 9 out of 10 educators agree that social media has had a negative impact on how students communicate and how they treat others. Treating others with respect and learning how to communicate are important parts of social emotional development. Subpoint C. Social media is a space child predators seek out victims. An estimated 89% of sexual advances directed at children occur in the internet chat rooms or through instant messaging, with over 50% of the victims of online sexual exploitation being between the ages of 12 and 15, according to the FBI. Contention 2 is that social media creates unattainable, unrealistic expectations. People create a false reality on social media, often without even intending to do so. Studies like the one published last year in Europe Journal of Psychology show that the photos and information people share on social media is overwhelmingly the most flattering and edited version of themselves. Taking in this content creates unattainable ideas of what beauty and lifestyle should look like. It is natural human behavior to form social comparisons on things like weight, looks, and lifestyle. But on social media, these extreme upward comparisons are damaging. Research published last year in medical psychology showed that participants experience immediate negative effects on their self-evaluations after viewing these upward comparison posts, and that they resulted in declines in self-esteem, mood, and life satisfaction. Unrealistic expectations that people cannot live up to do cause harm that is measurable and immediate. Contention 3 is that social media use is addictive and causes addictive behavior. Fear of missing out. The experience of constant and pervasive fear and worry of being excluded from gratifying experiences experienced by others has been associated with excessive use of digital communication tools to the point of developing an addiction. To quote the Journal of Addiction Research and Therapy, psychologists estimate that as many as 5 to 10% of Americans meet the criteria for social media addiction today. Social media addiction is a behavioral addiction that is characterized as being overly concerned about social media, driven by an uncontrollable urge to log on to or use social media, and devoting so much time and effort to social media that it impairs other important life areas. Addictive social media use will look much like any other substance use disorder and may include mood modification, salience, tolerance, withdrawal symptoms, and conflict and interpersonal problems because of usage and relapse. Like other addictions, there is a neurochemical response. According to the Addiction Center, social media platforms such as Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram produce the same neural circuitry that is caused by gambling and recreational drugs to keep consumers using their products as much as possible. Studies have shown that the constant stream of retweets, likes, and shares from these sites causes the brain reward area to trigger the same kind of chemical reaction seen with drugs like cocaine. In conclusion, if you don't believe that caring about other people is a fundamental part of being a human, I can't change your mind. But if you do recognize that social responsibility, then you should recognize that social media hurts people in ways that we can't negate through parental controls or clicking accept on terms and conditions. The conclusion is clear. The situation social media creates for some of our most vulnerable, the young people in our society, is inexcusable by any of the mild benefits it may offer. On balance, social media causes more harm than good.
I'm good whenever.
Okay, thank you. Okay, from fundraising for charities to rallying for justice, social media fuels activism.
reaching unprecedented markets and audiences is made possible for small businesses on social media. Mental health support networks flourish, offering solace and solidarity in virtual communities. Social media is a beautiful place. As the negative side, we're going to be arguing that social media, on balance, does more good than harm. By fostering flourishing in adolescence through important relationships, connections, and inspiration, as well as giving platforms to small businesses to thrive and creating a space for education and support for civil responsibility. Studies have found that social media use among adolescents has been linked to flourishing. One claiming having several people to talk to when someone is feeling lonely was the social media experience mostly related to flourishing in adolescence. This positive association was present over and above control variables such as self-esteem, ill-being, and personality. This result is in line with a recent meta-analysis showing that good social connections are an important protective factor against ill-being in adolescents. This shows social media is an important factor in the lives of adolescents. The connections and relationships adolescents form through these platforms can be a lifeline for them in difficult situations. Having someone to talk to when alone or when they do not have a support system at home is something adolescents can only get through social media. Another link to flourishing from this study states, inspiration through social media content, i.e. being inspired by others' posts and activities being an inspiration for others, improves flourishing levels in adolescence. Proving adolescents are experiencing and interacting with role models and peers in a positive way that would not be possible without social media. The study demonstrates how social media plays an insurmountable role in the development of adolescents. Another thing that flourishes due to social media is small businesses. It is no surprise how important social media is or how beneficial it can be for people starting a brand or company when over 4.95 billion people use social media worldwide. This is demonstrated by data collected from SCORE finding 77% of US small businesses use social media to facilitate key business functions, including sales, marketing, and customer service. 59% of businesses report that facilitating customer service through social media makes it easier to get issues resolved. 44% of businesses report that social media helps to generate brand awareness. 41% of businesses depend on social media to drive revenue. Without these platforms, small business owners would have a much more difficult time reaching their clientele, spreading awareness, and driving sales. As a country, we want these small businesses to thrive because, according to the Office of Advocacy, they create 2/3 of net new jobs, and they account for 44% of U.S. economic activity. This is a huge reason why, on balance, social media does more good than harm, and that it is something that affects the entire country. Social media also supports the growth of civil responsibility in its users. Some popular example of this that many people have participated in or most likely encountered on social media are the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, Black Lives Matter, Love Wins, Me Too, and Free Palestine, just to name a few, occurring on predominantly Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and now TikTok. Social platforms are a critical way for people to get information and education from people who founded and support these movements. Looking at the ongoing Israel-Gaza situation, the Palestine Children's Relief Fund states, social media platforms become crucial channels for delivering social media news to a global audience. This has been evident in the Israel-Gaza conflict, where updates and developments have been shared in real time, and that social media also plays a vital role in raising awareness about the humanitarian aspects of conflicts. For example, nonprofit organizations like the Palestine Children's Relief Fund highlight the dire circumstances in conflict zone, often propelled by social media campaigns. This is an example of a conflict ongoing in our world today that social media is playing a helpful role in. Another recent example of this is the Black Lives Matter movement, where, according to Brittany Levine Beckman, social media interest on the Black Lives Matter movement in the U.S. seems to line up with where protests took place. A heat map showing where people tweeted Black Lives Matter and variations of the phrase looked similar to a New York Times map pinpointing nationwide protests, demonstrating how online activism is then leading to an in-person activism as well. These more recent examples of social media activism exhibit how beneficial of a tool it is for us to get educated and support movements and conflicts that we find important to us. Looking at these three main examples of the benefits of social media demonstrate that, on balance, social media does more good than harm. It aids in the flourishing of adolescents in a crucial way for development, it helps small businesses pave the way to success, and it is a crucial tool for education and support of civil responsibility. Thank you.
We'd like to take a minute of our break.
Before crosswalk? All right.
Y'all are timing yourselves, right? Okay, cool.
55 seconds used. Seconds used.
Okay. We're good.
I have like 54 seconds used. Thank you, your cup is up. You said are you still using prep or y'all stop?
No, we're ready.
Oh, I'm waiting for y'all.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of a lot of the affirmative statistics were well under 50%, showing that on balance, social media does not do more good than harm. It would actually argue that it does more good than harm. Because if we're talking about on balance and like a utilitarian standpoint, that's nowhere near over 50%, which would argue that predominantly people are experiencing good things on social media and not the cyberbullying or the grooming or anything like that, because most of the statistics are even well below 25%.
Well, I just have a question about the flourishing, your first contention. Based on our evidence, our national survey said that 9 out of 10 educators agree that social media has a negative impact on students' communication. I just want to see where you're.
Yeah, so that's educators saying that they think that it's having an issue, whereas our study is saying that the adolescents themselves are saying that it's not really an issue, or some of them are always going to have an issue, it's always going to be prevalent, but not prevalent enough that the statistic is high enough to argue that social media does more harm than good. It actually argues that it does more good than harm. And with the false reality standpoint, we found in that same study that a lot of adolescents use social media to get inspired and see positive things. So while I know that body image and all that kind of stuff is an issue, it's not predominant enough to argue that social media does more harm than good. It would still argue that it does more good than harm.
Our stats are under 50% harm, which means that more are doing well. So,
Yes, I would agree with that.
so it's like false logic.
Okay, that's 2 minutes.
While social media platforms have undoubtedly transformed the way we communicate and interact with one another, it's imperative to recognize that the harms that perpetrated far more outweigh any of the potential benefits. Before I begin, I want to remind the audience that our definition of social media, which is the Merriam-Webster definition of social media, which defines social media as forms of electronic communication through users, creates online communities to share information, images, ideas, personal messages, and other content. The negative refutes that social media iterates that social media helps with social movements, as it shows in they talked about Black Lives Matter and Palestine, but during the Black Lives Matter movement, according to the Anti-Defamation League, there was a significant increase of online hate and harassment targeting marginalized communities involving Black individuals in recent years. And then, during these social movements, platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook have used these platforms to spread misinformation, fueling polarization and diverseness, with misleading narratives and information undermining the legitimacy of the movement. For example, in Oakland, California, Dave Patrick Underwood was fatally shot working as a construction security officer during a Black Lives Matter movement marking the killing of George Floyd. It was iterated through Twitter, a social media site, that the shooters were rioters, which created negative connotation to the protesters that were protesting during this movement. But it was later proved untrue by the FBI because the information was spread so far it reached the White House, so they had to make a press conference releasing information that the information released was not true. And then social media such as Instagram and Twitter during the Black Lives Matter movement had concerns about algorithm bias. Algorithm bias is where social media algorithms iterates racial bias by disproportionately amplifying content that reinforces stereotypes and discriminatory attitudes to minority groups such as Black people. According to the Algorithm Justice League, an organization that focuses on addressing algorithm bias, studies shows that social media algorithms disproportionately amplify harmful content leading to racial stereotypes and attitudes. For example, during the protests of George Floyd, there was reports of algorithm bias on platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, surfacing inflammatory and misleading content, such as false rumors about identities of the protesters and exaggeration of madness and looting. The negative iterates that social media helps with economic value to small businesses. Social media can negatively impact these businesses by iterating bad reputation damage, where negative reviews, comments, viral social media posts can damage the company's reputation. According to the Bright Local, 86% of the consumers read that reviews from local businesses and 55% of consumers will only use the business if it has 4 or more stars, iterating that fake reviews can lead to negative connotations to the businesses, which can harm the clientele and more growth of their interests. Another thing is employment productivity laws, where they're exercising the use of social media. They're not properly training their employees during work hours, which decreases the productivity. And this is according to the survey at the Career Builder, where 51% of employers believe that social media is the biggest productivity killer. And then the negative iterates that social media helps with children flourishing. We refuted it in our first speech by saying that social media is a space where children has experienced cyberbullying at some point through common sites such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. And that, to quote, I believe that our opposition that the negative interviews that social media helps with businesses and social movements and flourishing children, but I believe we refuted these claims during our first speech, so these to us having a better conclusion of how social media causes more harm than good.
Can we take a minute of prep?
Prep starting now. Seconds, please. Eight seconds remaining. And that's been a minute.
Okay. So the first affirmative speaker spoke on spoke on psychological issues such as depression and anxiety coming from cyberbullying, and according to a Harvard T.H. Chan, depression in online communities actually does help. So in social media, using social media to with people that have depression, it actually helps them, and it helps them figure out that they're not alone. And I'll go ahead and read some excerpts from the article. So they start by saying, we focus on two key facets of the sense of belonging: the sense of shared identity and trust, both of which have been founded in some social psychological theories to better understand the sense of belonging and its effect on psychological well-being. In online depression communities, users view themselves as members of the community and consider it a duty to assist other users in improving depression treatment and outcomes. And then this was their first hypothesis. The sense of shared identity has a positive effect on depression in online communities. And then their second is the users with a high level of trust are more likely to improve depression outcomes in online depression communities. So that's basically saying that these people that have depression can use social media to better themselves and to better other people because they are in a community. One of the driving things of depression is that you feel alone, and this gives them a way to not feel alone. And then this one is part of that same article, and it's talking about what specifically affects mental health. And it is saying that what is healthy versus potentially problematic social media use. And so Harvard assessed the association of two dimensions of social media use: how much is routinely used and how emotionally connected users are to the platforms, with 3 health-related outcomes: social well-being, positive mental health, and self-rated health. We found that routine social media use, for example, using social media as a part of everyday routine and responding to content that others share, is positively associated with all 3 health outcomes. Emotional connection to social media, for example, checking out excessively out of fear of missing out, being disappointed about or feeling disconnected from friends when not logged into social media, is negatively associated with all 3 outcomes. So the resolution is social media, does social media do more harm than good? So we are not talking about the people that are using social media. We are talking about social media in itself. Social media does not do harm. It is people that are on social media, and it's how they use social media. Social media is a tool, and it can be used to harm, just like any other tool can. And then also they spoke about grooming and using social media as a way to sexually talk to younger people on social media. And one of the things that the human rights advocates talk about is there are a variety of methods that can be undertaken in order to combating social media grooming as a form of predation. State parties may use educational tactics directed at both parents and children aimed at educating children on the signs of grooming and how to be safe on the internet. So this comes down to what is going on in the home and at their schools. It does, once again, as I said earlier, the resolution is about social media in itself and not people on social media. So we have to be able to talk about, is social media itself the harm? And the question is no, it's the people on social media. And then talking about it through the small business point, according to Benchmark 1, social media and marketing, there are 3.6 billion people use social media worldwide. So using social media for your small business increases brand awareness, a direct line to millions of users, a free way to post original content that drives customers to your website, and brand humanization, and a way to pull back the curtain so users can see the people behind the brand, which is how most brands will succeed. And then so onto some off-case arguments. So during the our first crossfire, my partner asked about that their statistics were all below 50, so in a utilitarian viewpoint, they will not, social media does not do more harm than good. They actually proved for us that social media does do more good than harm. Thank you.
Can you define social media? What is your definition of social media?
It can be the same as yours, the Merriam-Webster.
Okay. If I recall correctly, you said that social media is by the user, is not what social media as a whole, it's just how the user uses it.
That is how the resolution itself is talking about social media. It's not talking about social media users. So we're not here to debate social media users. We're here to debate social media.
Okay, I was just saying that because you said social media users and how social media is brought out. And I was just saying that because our definition of social media, if you want to use ours, is communication through different online communities share that information by images, ideas, personal messages, and other content.
Yes, your definition is talking about it as a tool, which is exactly what I was talking about. It's a tool, and we're not talking about how we use, what images we share, your definition isn't specifically saying what images we share and stuff like this. It's just saying images, so that can be good. And with your statistics from earlier, they are less than 50%.
I have more statistics. You talked about economically how social media helps with economic-wise. In a study by the Duet found that 84% of the executives found that reputational risk are a big strategy challenge that they face. So they'd rather not address those risks, with another 67%, which is over 50% of which are iterated. So I guess my question is, since you want to use that 50% is some utilitarianism standard, would you discredit my statistics, or would y'all, if you would understand?
I will not discredit your statistics, but reviews on business is still a good thing, negative or positive, because someone is benefiting either way, either the business with a positive review and leading to a happy customer, or the customer is benefiting because they were able to avoid a subpar product and will then find another business with a better product, leading to business and customer to be happy.
As
That's
an
time. That's the 2 minutes.
Ready? The resolution that we're arguing today is, on balance, social media does more harm than good. The other side would argue that social media is a tool, that it has to be separated from its users. But the users are social media. These are platforms created by the users. And the tool itself isn't doing any of these things. It's user interactions that do these things. Facebook itself isn't reaching out to anybody and doing anything. So, social media, as it exists today, we're not debating a potential fantasy version where social media exists without its user and it can do all of these wonderful things. If the world were a more honest and kind place, maybe that would be the case, but the reality of what it is now is that it's causing psychological harm, a warped view of reality, and damaging addiction to particularly our young people. The con side has claimed that social media helps youth flourish. And that is incorrect because of all of the things that our contentions have outlined. Cyberbullying is a real problem, even if it's not happening to more than 50% of people. The idea that if our stats are less than 50%, that means that it must, on balance, be good, is a fallacy. If there were a train crash where less than 50% of the people riding on the train died, you wouldn't say, that was a great train crash. Less than 50% of the people died. We need more of that. That's a fallacy in the thinking, and social media is hurting young people every day. Khan has also tried to make the case that social media is great for online activism and raising awareness. The small amount of good and benefit that comes from social media and this sort of activism and political sphere is not outweighed by the damage that it has done. It has made the activism in this country a very divisive and inaccurate experience. If you've been on social media in the last several years, you're probably going to be facing burnout from things like Black Lives Matter, from seeing all of these horrible images that are coming out of Gaza and wondering to yourself, is this real? Did this actually happen, or is this something that's been AI generated? You're not getting an accurate picture of what is happening on the ground and what these activists are trying to accomplish, because it's completely hijackable by the other side, as well as by people just spreading word of mouth, and it spreads really, really quickly. So we've won this debate because we've proven, with evidence published recently and by reputable sources, that social media is harming our youth. Through cyberbullying, which is affecting, according to bullying experts, 37% of youth. And the majority of that is happening online. Yes, bullying can happen offline too, but the people that are being cyberbullied are also likely to be bullied in real life. In addition to that, it's causing depression and anxiety. And I think everyone has seen cases that come across your news about young people who've taken their own lives after being relentlessly cyberbullied. We can't say that this isn't 50% of the people, so this must be an okay situation, because that would be ridiculous. If you care about people, you have to care about this issue, because it's a real one. We've also proven that, social media is a place where addiction is happening. 5 to 10% of the US population meets the criteria to be described as addicted to social media. That's coming with changes in behavior, changes in mood, missing out on real life experiences because they're on their phone. It's coming with issues in their interpersonal lives. And this is a real addiction. The brain chemistry is happening with the same kind of results that you would see from somebody doing cocaine. These have been tested and it's measurable, and this is a real thing. And the reason everybody knows about addiction is because it's not easy to kick. How can we expect the young people, the most vulnerable people in our society, to know how to mitigate these circumstances? You can't. If it were a perfect world, parents would be looking over their kids' shoulders, making sure that they're not bullying others or being bullied. Teachers would be aware of this. Parents would be able to take the phone away from the kids, but that's not the reality that we're in. And given the resolution, the question for the judges is, which side has made the case for the greatest good for the greatest number of people? And today that's clearly been us, the affirmative.
Side affirms that social media is harmful due to the following qualities: psychological injuries, addictive qualities, and unattainable or unrealistic expectations being placed onto individuals. They discuss that cyberbullying has a large effect on adolescents and claim that this cyberbullying leads to mental health problems like anxiety and depression. Though, from a CNN research article, the negative found that when teenagers themselves were asked about their own experience on social media, the majority claimed to have a positive experience. CNN claims that researchers with the Pew Research Center surveyed 1,316 teens across the United States ages 13 to 17 from mid-April to early May. The youths were asked about their thoughts, feelings, and the use of social media. Only 27% said that their experience is even worse than their parents think. The rest said it was either about right or better, the survey said. In total, 80% said social media gives them some level of connection to what is going on in their friends' lives. 71% said it's a place where they can show their creativity. 67% said social media reassures them that they have people to support them through tough times. And 58% said it makes them feel more accepted, according to the survey. Adolescents can also find solitude through social media, especially those that are a part of marginalized groups, by developing relationships with peers online. The National Institute of Health says these relationships can afford opportunities to have positive interactions with more diverse peer groups than are available to them offline, and can provide important social support to youth. Buffering effects against stress that online social supports from peers may provide can be especially important for youths who are often marginalized, including racial, ethnic, and sexual and gender minorities. For example, studies have shown that social media may support the mental health and well-being of lesbian, gay, bisexual, asexual, transgender, and other youths by enabling peer connection. The positive side made the claim that social media sets unattainable and unrealistic standards onto its users. However, we have seen these standards being put on people far before the creation of social media, meaning it is not inherently to blame. Specifically pinpointing body image issues, if we look back through history, people's perception of themselves have always been affected by the media. Look at the 90s and early 2000s magazines that were promoting unhealthy lifestyles to young girls and boys, encouraging what was called the heroin chic body type that was favored at the time. The National Institute of Health also says mass media campaigns can directly and indirectly produce positive changes or prevent negative changes in health-related behaviors across large populations. Another valuable quote from this era to further prove that the point that this has been an issue long before social media is, "Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels." Though social media is a place where you can find negative self-talk, there are many people and influencers who use their platforms to encourage positive self-image to their audience. Social media also played a huge part in changing the modeling industry and calling it out for being closed-minded. Going back to the positive side's rebuttal that social media helps spread false information in regards to civil rights movements like the Black Lives Matter movement, the negative argues that though social media may foster misinformation, it still forces people to know about issues. People might be less filtered or saying new things, but once again, at least people are discussing such important issues that were once swept under the rug. County Health Rankings and Roadmap says surveys of youth suggest that political use of digital media, including social media, is positively associated with engagement in offline political activities. College students and adults who participate in more expressive political activities and frequently share political content on social media are more civically and politically active offline than those who do not participate in the activities. So although social media will always have users posting false information, it also is largely the reason that we are seeing younger generations much more politically engaged in the last decade. It also gave people the opportunity to support movements during the pandemic if they had things stopping them from being able to join in-person events. Finally, the positive claims that poor reviews from social media could be the reason that certain businesses reach a point of failure, claiming that most businesses with under 4 out of 5 stars not getting nearly any engagement. However, the negative points out that without social media, half of these businesses would not exist in the first place, nor would thousands of people's jobs. Nori Jones, Richard Borgman, and Ibru Yulosoy say benefits from the use of websites and social media sites include an increase in awareness and inquiries, enhanced relationships with customers, an increase in the number of new customers, enhanced ability to reach customers on a global scale, and co-promotion of local businesses that enhance the image of small businesses in the region. Thus, social media provides a space for these businesses to flourish. And to touch on a point made by the positive side, that social media is not just a tool. Michelle Ickard, a parenting educator and speaker, makes a statement that social media is a tool, and as such, it's neither all good nor all bad. Social media is what you make of it. And the negative wants to further push that without social media, we wouldn't have all that it's provided, such as better communication, civic engagement, community building, and employment. Thank you.
We'd like to take our minute break.
All right. Starting now. It's a debate going on, so do you want to take a seat as we speak? $15 seconds remaining.
We're ready.
Okay.
Okay, so you mentioned a statistic about, from Pew, that teens essentially like social media don't have a huge issue with it, right? So Pew also said that a large majority of teens believe that permanent bans from social media and criminal charges can help reduce harassment on platforms.
That we have produced something.
Yes, but what does that have to do with our statistic on it? Because those are not, those ideas are not contradicting each other.
I believe she's saying that because she said that, so that in this research study that you got, and this research study that we got this information from, that the children they say that they feel comfortable with social media, that they don't believe there's more good than negative. So I think she's just agreeing because she got the same information from the same source.
I think them saying that they think that those people should be prosecuted, that would still be, that would still be good. Like for people who are using social media for bad things, should be prosecuted, yeah, for sure. And that would just make social media an even better place. So we understand that the affirmative is saying that people are experiencing harm on social media, that's undeniable. But per the statistics, it's not a majority, and that would argue on balance social media does more good than harm. So the train wreck example doesn't really have anything to do with the resolution because we are talking about on balance, which would indicate we're looking for majorities.
What does balance mean to you?
Like, on balance, what it is the majority of the time.
Right, so if less than 50% are experiencing cyberbullying, to you, that means that it is on balance a better experience?
Yes, because if 37% of people are experiencing it, then the bigger half is going to be people are not experiencing it, so that would mean on balance.
I think we misspoke. Our statistic is 73%.
Well,
Of
then
face
that's-
cyberbullying,
then that is
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
On social
You-
media
We've been through the whole debate.
yeah,
Two
saying
crossfires.
37%.
Well,
Y'all have
And the
also said
contention was
37.
73% though.
I had 37.
Y'all all said 37.
Yeah.
I would like to ask, you said that since before social media that there's been a history of eating disorders being displayed publicly, that, are you trying to say that because before social media there was eating disorders displaying and glorifying it, that is not a big issue now through social media, even though social media is showing a fast and rapid rate?
I'm not trying to disregard that social media has, encouraged that environment. However, I was trying to say that today we're talking about social media and its effects, and I was trying to point out that these issues have happened before social media and are happening during social media. Therefore, we cannot inherently blame social media. So I'm just trying to point out that.
But you could say that social media furthered the agenda. Not, you're
You
saying
could
that
say
didn't
media
start
in
it, but-
itself furthered the agenda. We are not here to argue if media is doing harm. We're here arguing social media,
You are
if it
arguing that
does.
social media cause harm.
if we're not saying it doesn't cause harm. We're saying it does more good than harm.
Do you
Y'all
have
have
like a
fun.
statistic or anything that says how many people experience it?
And while you find that, I'm gonna go ahead and just ask another question. So, would y'all say that social media is doing more harm than good right now?
This is the last response, as I
Okay.
said.
Yes, all of our statistics are from the past 2 years. Most of them are from this year and last year. We only have
And
one from
We
2022.
used your examples from social movements to economical to how you said that children are flourishing from social media. So
Okay.
we would agree.
Cool.
Now, speaking using prep or happening?
I was received.
Oh, you used to, yeah. You use all your prep, so it's.
We ready? Okay.
As we close this debate, we've heard a lot from both sides regarding social media, but let's revisit the core question. Does social media do more good than harm? I'm sorry, does social media do more harm than good? Our opponents have painted a pretty picture for connection, community, and opportunities provided by social media. While these points are valid, they don't account for the damages done to the mental health of millions. In reality, social media has created a society that is obsessed with likes and not real life. The evidence that we have presented and the reality of the negative impacts of social media tells a more concerning story. The truth is, social media can be a breeding ground for psychological harm. It chips away at our self-esteem, replaces real-world connections with fake validation, and creates a constant cycle that can lead to increased rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Why? Because platforms are designed to create an environment of constant social comparison and unattainable lifestyles, open the door for self-doubt and dissatisfaction in our own lives. The issue of cyberbullying can't be ignored. Social media has unfortunately become a breeding ground for harmful behaviors such as trolling and all kinds of harassment. As we stated in our contention, 73% of teenagers have been cyberbullied, have experienced it on social media. The anonymity that and distance provided by these platforms make it easier for people to engage in this harmful behavior, and that can have devastating and long-lasting effects on mental health, leading to, like I said before, depression, anxiety, and even in some cases, suicide. We must also consider the addictive nature of social media. With every notification of a like, a comment, and share, there's a rush of dopamine that creates an addictive cycle similar to that of drug usage and gambling. The fear of missing out has led to compulsive behaviors that can disrupt our sleep patterns, our physical health, and ultimately affect our real-life relationships. We're trading genuine connections for fake ones and sacrificing our well-being for a temporary feeling, a temporary high we get when we are online using social media. Yes, social media connects us, but at what cost? Social media preys on our vulnerabilities and thrives on our insecurities and comparisons. It breeds negativity, and the communities that are created no longer become a safe haven. We deserve better. We deserve platforms that empowers us and not exploits our weaknesses. We deserve connections that are genuine and not performative. As we conclude, I urge you to think about the broader impact of social media. While it has its benefits and the roles it has played in today's society has been detrimental to our mental health, fostering addiction, enabling cyberbullying, and the unattainable. We're in an era that demands action to protect our mental health, to prioritize real-world connections over virtual ones. The cost of social media as it is now is simply too high. It's time to invest in a future where human connection comes first. It's time to acknowledge that when it comes to our well-being, social media does more harm than good. Thank you.
Today, we have proven that social media does more good than harm. We have shown its positive effects on adolescent mental health, the growth of small businesses, and the proliferation of widespread activist movements such as Black Lives Matter. The affirmative side argues that social media is a platform its users create. While this is untrue, as social media is created by its founders and businesses as a tool for communication. Social media can be used in many ways, and most of the ways it is used are inherently positive, especially when it comes to mental health, in contrast to what the affirmative side has attempted to prove. The affirmative side started this debate by providing us with a faulty statistic. Only 37% of users experience cyberbullying, which we all heard and wrote down. The statistic has been the basis for some of what we've discussed throughout crossfires and such, but we have proved, even despite that, that social media is more likely to improve symptoms of depression and mental health issues among individuals, and that the negative effects of social media on mental health do not outweigh the positive effects. We have proved that social media is positively linked to adolescent flourishing and positive mental impacts on its users. Specifically with the quote, "A majority of adolescents report that social media helps them feel more accepted, like they have people who can support them through tough times, like they have a place to show their creative side, and like they feel more connected to what's going on in their friends' lives." End quote. According to another article in the Journal of Computers and Human Behavior, quote, "Communication allows us to form relationships with others. With the advancement of technology, communication has become easier. Social media has led to an exponential increase of communication, allowing connections between individuals and communities that have previously been isolated. We've discussed how social media fosters communities where minorities can come together and escape from discriminatory and violent realities. We have specifically discussed how these communities among LGBT people can form. Personally, as a queer person, I've experienced this firsthand, how social media creates these communities where it's the only place where people of small minority groups can come together and escape from violent in-person realities. And that is one way that social media increases positive communication and mental health among adolescents and members of minority groups. Additionally, our site has proved that social media is not the main cause of body image issues and unrealistic expectations, as the affirmative side claims. We have shown that other sources of mainstream media, such as television and magazines, have been negatively affecting consumers since before any social media platforms were even invented. The affirmative side attempted to prove social media did not have a positive impact on activism, particularly as an example during the Black Lives Matter movement. They called social justice engagement the organization of protests, the spread of information from marginalized communities, such as Palestinians, using social media to share their experiences in the Israel-Gaza conflict, and civic engagement, a small amount of good. That's what they said. It was just a small amount of good. They severely downplayed its incredibly positive effects and the fact that it's been proven that activist movements on social media directly lead to more in-person activism, such as engaging in protests in person. This is a very large amount of good.
The affirmative side attempted to prove that small businesses can be harmed by social media. They pointed out the potential for negative reviews on these small businesses. However, according to the American Marketing Association, quote, conditions that enhance the customer's ability to experience empathy, such as when the business responds in an empathetic manner to bad reviews, can result in positive consumer responses towards the business. This means that negative reviews actually have the potential to give the businesses an opportunity to build community with their customers and speak directly to their customers, creating an overall positive effect. We've additionally proven that social media can help small businesses grow simply by allowing them to become more known and have more consumers and reviewers in the first place. We've discussed methods that can be taken to combat social media use for predation, which is another point the affirmative side pointed out. This is a matter of properly educating the users of social media to allow for the benefits of social media to continue to outweigh its potential deficits, which it currently does. In conclusion, we have proved that social media positively affects a majority of its users, with around, as we previously stated, less than a quarter of its users being negatively affected, and around more than 3/4 of its users having positive experiences. We proved that on balance, social media does more good than harm by positively affecting users' mental health, helping small businesses grow, creating widespread activist movements, and increasing communication between its users. Thank you.